The evening wind crawled through the quiet valley, carrying the dry smell of dust and rusted metal. The sun had almost disappeared behind the mountains, leaving a deep orange glow that turned everything into shadows. Near the edge of the empty village stood an old water pump that had not been used in years. Its handle was bent, its paint peeled away, and weeds grew tall around it. Still, every night a single man came there. His name was Eli, and he lived alone in a small wooden cabin down the hill. The pump was his only source of clean water, and it gave him a reason to leave the silence of his home each evening. That night felt colder than usual. Eli pulled his jacket tight and started to pump the handle. The iron groaned with a tired sound as water splashed into his bucket. He was thinking about how lonely the world had become. Most people had left the valley after the mines closed, and the forest was slowly taking back everything humans had built. Eli liked the peace, but sometimes the silence pressed on his ears until it hurt. He sighed, wiped his forehead, and listened to the water falling. That was when he heard something strange. At first, it sounded like wind moving through leaves. Slow, heavy, uneven. Then he realized it was breathing. Deep, rough breaths, followed by a low moan that seemed to come from behind the pump. Eli froze. His first thought was that an injured animal had crawled there to die. He stepped closer, careful not to make noise. The ground near the pump was wet and dark, and the smell of burnt air touched his nose. He looked over the pump and saw a shadow, huge, long, and moving slowly. His chest tightened. The shape twitched again, and moonlight revealed a glimmer of scales. They shone faintly like metal under water. For a second, Eli could not breathe. The creature lying there was enormous. Its body twisted and covered with dust and dried blood. Its wings were folded in a broken angle, and its tail dragged across the stones. He had seen drawings like this in his grandmother's old books, but never thought he would see one in real life. It was a dragon. Eli's hands shook. He took a step back, ready to run. But then the creature moved its head and tried to speak. Its voice was barely more than a whisper, rough like stones grinding together. "Please, water." Eli stood still, heart pounding. The dragon's eyes opened just a little. They were golden, but the light inside them was fading. Every breath looked painful. It was not roaring or threatening. It was begging. Eli looked at the bucket full of water in his hand. He hesitated, knowing how crazy this was. But something in the creature's voice felt too real, too human. Slowly, he moved closer. "I don't know if you can drink this," he said quietly. "But here." He placed the bucket near the dragon's mouth and backed away. The dragon sniffed, then lowered its head. Its tongue touched the water, and the sound of swallowing filled the air. Eli could see steam rising from the creature's throat as if the water met fire inside it. The dragon drank again and again until the bucket was empty. Then it lifted its head, eyes a little brighter now, and looked at him directly. "You helped me," it said, voice trembling. Eli nodded slowly. "You needed water." The dragon tried to move, but its wing collapsed under its own weight. It winced, groaning in pain. "Too late. They will come." "Who?" Eli asked. His voice came out softer than he expected. The dragon's pupils narrowed. "Hunters," it said. "They smell the fire. They never stop." Eli's stomach twisted. Hunters? For dragons? He thought it was a dying creature's dream, but then he heard something far away. Faint metallic clinks, echoing through the trees. The sound of armor, maybe engines. He turned toward the forest, and a shiver ran through his spine. "You mean people?" he whispered. The dragon didn't answer. Its body trembled. Its breath came short and fast. "You must go," it said. "They'll kill you too." Eli shook his head. "I can't just leave you like this." The dragon's eyes dimmed, then sparked for a brief second. "Humans, always curious," it muttered. "Sometimes brave." The sound in the forest grew louder. Eli could see faint lights moving between the trees now, cold blue beams cutting through fog. He crouched beside the dragon, unsure what to do. "Can you move?" he asked. "Not far," the dragon said. The fire inside me is fading. Eli looked at the old barn near his cabin down the hill. It wasn't far. If he could somehow help the dragon reach it, maybe they could hide there until the lights passed. But how could one man move a creature this size? Still, something inside him refused to walk away. He picked up the empty bucket and whispered, "Stay quiet. I'll get more water." The dragon watched him with tired eyes as he filled the bucket again and poured it gently over its burned scales. The smoke that rose from its wounds smelled of iron and ash. The creature sighed deeply, the sound almost peaceful. Then it whispered something that made Eli's blood freeze. "They're here." Eli looked up. Between the trees, a dozen tiny red dots flickered, like eyes, like targeting lasers. The wind stopped for a heartbeat, and even the crickets went silent. The dragon lowered its head, whispering one last word before darkness took it again. "Run!" The night exploded with the roar of engines, and strange shadows swept across the old pump as Eli stood frozen between fear and impossible wonder. The forest was no longer quiet. Strange lights flickered between the trees, moving like ghosts in the mist. Eli could hear the crunch of heavy boots, the sharp hum of something mechanical, and short bursts of radio chatter that didn't sound human. His heart pounded against his ribs. The dragon lay still behind the old pump, its golden eyes now half closed, glowing faintly under the moonlight. Eli crouched beside it, unsure whether to hide, run, or stay and protect the creature that had trusted him. Then, through the fog, a figure appeared, tall, armored, and silent. Its armor gleamed like polished bone, and its face was hidden behind a mask with a glowing blue visor. It held a weapon shaped like a long spear that buzzed with energy. Eli ducked lower behind the pump, holding his breath. The hunter stopped, scanning the area. A cold voice came from the mask, mechanical and calm. "Thermal signature confirmed. Target nearby. Proceed with caution." More figures stepped out of the shadows, 5 of them each moving in perfect formation. They were not from any army Eli had ever seen. Their weapons, their movements, their voices, everything about them felt unnatural. The dragon's warning echoed in his mind. They never stop. The leader raised a hand and pointed toward the pump. "Residual fire energy detected here," it said. "It's weakening. Move in." Eli's blood turned cold. He looked at the dragon, whose chest rose weakly with each breath. He could feel the creature's warmth against the cold night air, like standing near a dying campfire. He leaned close and whispered, "You have to stay quiet." The dragon's cracked lips moved slightly. "They smell me, even through stone." Eli frowned, thinking fast. He couldn't fight them, but maybe he could lead them away. He glanced at the old bucket, then at the stream behind his cabin. An idea sparked in his mind, dangerous, maybe stupid, but it was all he had. He picked up a burning stick from a nearby lantern and threw it toward the bushes on the other side of the clearing. The dry leaves caught fire instantly, sending a wave of orange light through the mist. The hunters turned. "Over there!" one of them shouted. The group rushed toward the flames. Eli waited until they disappeared behind the trees, then turned back to the dragon. "We have to move. Now." The dragon tried to lift itself, its claws digging into the dirt, but its body trembled and collapsed again. "Can't, wings broken," it said weakly. Eli looked around desperately. The only place big enough to hide it was the old barn near his cabin. It wasn't far, maybe 100 meters downhill, but moving the dragon that distance was impossible for one man. Still, he couldn't just leave it here to be hunted down. He ran to the cabin, grabbed an old wooden cart, and rolled it back up the hill. Creaked loudly, but he didn't care anymore. When he reached the pump again, the dragon stared at him with disbelief. "You're mad," it whispered. "Probably," Eli said. "But I'm not leaving you to die." He used every bit of his strength to lift the dragon's head and help it slide its front claws onto the cart. The creature groaned in pain, smoke rising from its wounds. Eli pushed, his muscles screaming. Inch by inch, the cart moved, carrying the dragon's heavy body toward the barn. The sound of metal wheels scraping against stone echoed through the valley. Behind them, a mechanical drone flew overhead, scanning with a beam of light. Eli froze, dragging the cart under a tree until the drone passed. He could feel his heart hammering in his throat. The dragon's breathing grew weaker, each exhale sounding more like a growl. They finally reached the barn. Eli pulled the doors open, rolled the dragon inside, and covered it with old cloth and straw. The smell of dust filled the air. "You'll be safe here for now," he said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. The dragon looked at him through half-lidded eyes. "Why help me? Humans forgot our kind long ago." Eli wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Maybe they did," he said quietly. "But I didn't." The dragon's gaze softened for a moment. "Long ago we fought beside your people," it murmured. "When the sky burned and worlds fell, humans stood with dragons. Then time buried the truth. You built machines and we became myths." Eli sat beside it, exhausted but listening. The story felt impossible, yet something inside him believed every word. "And now these hunters. They're after you? They call themselves the Order of Ashes," the dragon said. "They hunt what they fear. Magic, flame, life itself. They want silence. A world of cold steel." Eli clenched his fists. "Not if I can stop them." The dragon gave a faint, broken laugh. "One man against the Order? Foolish. Brave." Before Eli could answer, a sharp beam of light cut through the cracks in the barn wall. He looked out through a hole. The hunters had found the trail. Their visors glowed brighter, and their leader's voice echoed. "The creature moved. The scent is fresh. Spread out. Find it." Eli's blood ran cold. He grabbed a metal rod from the wall, his only weapon. The dragon raised its head weakly. "You can't fight them," it said. "Hide." Eli shook his head. "If they find you, they'll kill you. And me. I'll distract them." The dragon's eyes widened slightly. "That choice makes you one of us." Before Eli could respond, the barn doors rattled. A hunter's shadow appeared outside, its weapon humming with energy. Eli held his breath, gripping the metal rod tightly. The door creaked open an inch, spilling blue light into the darkness. The dragon whispered, "Stay down." Eli crouched beside it as footsteps entered the barn. The hunter's mechanical voice said softly, "Thermal reading, inside." Eli's heart pounded so hard he thought the sound would give them away. Then the dragon exhaled, a small puff of smoke that floated up toward the roof. The hunter noticed it immediately and aimed its weapon. But before it could fire, Eli grabbed a rusted lantern and smashed it against the wall. Flames burst out, lighting the hay and wood around them. The barn filled with smoke and fire. The hunter stumbled back, shouting for backup. Eli grabbed the dragon's claw. "Go! Now!" The dragon gathered what strength it had left and crawled toward a broken section of the wall. Fire roared behind them, spreading fast. Eli followed, choking on smoke. Outside, the cold air hit his face, and he turned just in time to see the barn collapse in flames. The hunters shouted in confusion, thinking their target had burned inside. Eli and the dragon hid behind a pile of rocks near the stream, gasping for breath. The dragon looked at the burning barn and whispered weakly, "You risked your life for me." Eli stared at the flames. "You warned me," he said quietly. "That makes us even." But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere in the darkness, more lights were rising, hundreds of them. The order was not finished, and neither was he. The first light of dawn crept over the mountains, painting the valley in dull gray. The barn was nothing but smoke and ashes now. From their hiding spot near the stream, Eli and the dragon watched in silence as the hunters searched the wreckage. The dragon's breathing was shallow, and steam rose from its wounds every time it exhaled. Eli's eyes burned from smoke and exhaustion, but he refused to move until the strange armored figures finally left. Only when their ships faded into the horizon did he dare to breathe properly again. The valley was quiet once more, but that quiet now felt dangerous. Too still, too heavy, as if the land itself was holding its breath. He turned toward the dragon. It looked worse in daylight. Its scales, once golden and strong, were now cracked and blackened. The great wings lay twisted against the ground like broken sails. Its blood was thick and dark, but when the light hit it, Eli saw tiny sparks inside, as if the liquid itself was fire trying to stay alive. The sight made his chest tighten. He knew this creature would die if he did nothing. But what could a man with 2 hands and a bucket of water do against wounds made by weapons not of this world? Still, Eli stood up and said quietly, "We have to fix your wounds before they come back." The dragon turned its head, the golden eyes dim but still proud. "You can't fix what's already dying," it said. "My fire heart is fading. It has burned too long without rest." Eli shook his head. "Maybe I can't fix everything, but I can try. I won't let you die here like this." He looked toward the remains of the barn, now a graveyard of ashes. "Not after what we just survived." For a long moment, the dragon said nothing. Then it lowered its head slightly. "Humans," it whispered. "So fragile, yet always stubborn." Eli found an old storage shed near his cabin, half broken, but still standing. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give shelter. Using all his strength, he dragged planks, ropes, and pieces of cloth to where the dragon rested. He cleaned the wounds with cold water and wrapped them with torn sheets, even though the dragon flinched with every touch. When he found a piece of metal lodged deep in its side, he bit his lip, grabbed a pair of tongs, and said, "This will hurt." The dragon chuckled weakly, a deep rumble that shook the ground. "Pain is not new to me." Eli pulled. The metal came out with a hiss, glowing faintly red as if it still carried fire inside. The dragon roared, not in anger but agony, and the sound echoed through the whole valley. Birds flew from the trees. The ground trembled. Eli dropped the tongs, terrified that the noise would bring the hunters back. "I'm sorry," he whispered. The dragon groaned, breathing hard. "No, you did right. The poison in that shard would have killed me faster." Its voice was softer now, almost gentle. "You risk much for me, human." Eli wiped sweat from his forehead. "You warned me. You could have said nothing." The dragon looked away, toward the horizon. "Once, long ago, I swore to protect humankind. But humans forgot us. They built cities on our bones, used our stories to scare children, and turned the old promises into lies." Eli frowned. "You sound like you still care, though." "I do," the dragon said slowly. "But caring brings pain." Its golden eyes flicked toward him. "You remind me of the first ones, the ones who stood beside us when the stars burned." Eli didn't know what to say. He wasn't sure he even believed what he was hearing. Dragons, humans, fighting side by side? It sounded like something from an old myth, not from this broken world. Yet when he looked into the creature's eyes, he felt truth there, deep, sad truth. The morning stretched into noon. Eli worked quietly, cleaning, covering, feeding water to the dragon in small bowls since its mouth was too weak to drink deeply. He brought old blankets from his cabin to keep it warm, even though the dragon's own body gave off faint heat. When he finally sat down beside it, exhaustion hit him like a wave. "What will happen if your fire heart goes out?" he asked softly. The dragon closed its eyes. "When it dies, so does the balance. My flame is tied to this mountain. If it fades completely, the land will freeze, and life here will wither." Eli's throat went dry. "Then we need to find a way to keep it alive." "There is only one way," the dragon said. "The altar of flame, high above the clouds, on the peak you call Dragon's Rest. But I cannot fly, and even if I could, they would follow." Eli looked up at the distant peak. It was miles away, covered in snow and surrounded by clouds that looked like smoke. "Then I'll take you there," he said without thinking. The dragon turned its head sharply, its eyes flaring with light. "You cannot. You would never survive that climb." Eli smiled tiredly. "Maybe not, but I'm not letting you die here either." The dragon's stare softened again. "Why?" it asked. "Why risk your life for a dying creature of legend?" Eli leaned against the shed wall and looked toward the burned barn. "Because I'm dying too," he said quietly. "Not like you, not from wounds or poison. Just inside. Alone." He paused. Maybe helping you will make me feel alive again." For a long time, the dragon didn't answer. The air around them was heavy with silence. Then the creature spoke, its voice low and almost kind. "Perhaps our fires fade for the same reason, human. Alone, even flame grows cold." Before Eli could respond, a faint sound reached his ears, a distant mechanical hum. He froze. The dragon lifted its head slowly, nostrils flaring. "They're back," it whispered. Eli ran outside, scanning the sky. Over the mountain ridge, small silver dots appeared, moving fast, more hunter ships. He felt his heart sink. They didn't leave. The dragon's tail twitched. No, they were watching, waiting. Eli grabbed his tools, his backpack, whatever he could carry. "We have to move before they find this place." The dragon looked toward the forest, its eyes glowing brighter for a moment. "My strength is returning slowly. I can crawl, but not far." Eli clenched his jaw. "Then we move as far as we can. I'll find a way." As the first ship descended, its engines roaring across the valley, Eli helped the dragon rise. Every movement sent waves of pain through its body, but it didn't cry out. Together, they moved toward the river, the morning sun flashing across the metal wreckage behind them. Then a loud crack split the air, a sound like thunder. Eli turned. The hunters had found the ruins of the barn, and one of them shouted, "The target lives!" The dragon growled softly, "Go, Eli. Hide." Eli shook his head. "I'm not leaving you again." The dragon looked at him, a flicker of something ancient and proud in its golden eyes. "Then you truly are one of us." A beam of blue light tore through the trees, burning a trail across the ground. Eli threw himself down as the dragon unleashed a sudden burst of flame, weak but powerful enough to light up the sky. The blast hit the hunter scanners, making them retreat for a moment. When the smoke cleared, Eli stared at the dragon in awe. "You can still fight?" "Only once more," the dragon said, its voice like thunder fading in rain. "After that, I'll have nothing left." Eli swallowed hard. The mountain peak shimmered in the distance, covered in cloud and legend. He knew now what he had to do, and that every step would test him beyond anything he had ever faced. Above them, the sky trembled with approaching ships, and somewhere deep inside the dragon's chest, the last spark of ancient fire burned, waiting for one final chance to rise again. Smoke rolled over the valley like a wounded cloud, twisting through the trees as the sound of engines echoed from above. Eli ran beside the dragon, guiding it toward the forest's thickest part. Each of the creature's steps shook the ground, leaving behind deep marks in the soil. Its wings dragged behind like torn banners, and every breath it took came with a low growl of pain. Yet it kept moving, driven by a strength that seemed to come from memory, not muscle. The forest swallowed them both in shadow. The air was cool and damp, filled with the smell of moss and ash. Eli could hear drones buzzing faintly overhead, scanning the area with sharp beams of blue light that pierced through branches like needles. He pressed his back against the dragon's side, trying to keep his breathing quiet. The dragon's body was hot to the touch, its scales faintly glowing where fire still lived beneath. "They won't stop," Eli whispered. "No," the dragon replied weakly, its voice rumbling through the ground. "The order never leaves their prey alive." Eli looked toward the sky, where the hum of the hunter's ships grew louder again. "Then we'll have to outsmart them." He guided the dragon to a narrow ravine that led toward a river. The dragon lowered itself carefully, crawling through the rocky passage. Its claws scraped stone, leaving sparks behind. When they reached the water, Eli helped it drink again. The river reflected the first colors of morning, a pale blue light that shimmered around them. For a short moment it felt peaceful. Then the dragon spoke again, its tone softer, older, almost mournful. "I remember a time when humans were not afraid of fire," it said slowly. "When your kind and mine shared the same sky." Eli turned toward it, confused. "You mean stories? Like myths?" The dragon shook its massive head. "Not stories. History. We fought together when the first invaders came from the dark void." Humans burned brighter than any star then. Their courage was beautiful. Eli frowned. So what happened? Why did we forget? The dragon's eyes dimmed. Power. Fear. The same curse that always follows your kind. You learned to build machines that could kill faster than dragons could fly. You no longer needed us. Some of my kind turned bitter. Wars began. The Order of Ashes was born from those who wanted to erase all trace of magic, even their own. Eli listened quietly, the words sinking deep. The world he knew, the empty towns, the dying lands, the machines in the sky, suddenly felt like pieces of a story that had been half erased. You said your fire is fading, he said after a moment. If we can reach the altar of flame, can it heal you? The dragon hesitated. Perhaps, but that path is guarded by death itself. No human has climbed it in centuries. Eli smiled faintly. Guess I'll be the first. The dragon stared at him for a long moment, as if studying his heart through his eyes. Then it lowered its head slightly. You are strange, Eli. You carry no weapon, no armor. Yet you stand beside a dying dragon as if you were born to do so. Eli looked at his reflection in the water. Maybe I was just born to do something that matters. A sudden explosion tore through the silence. The water rippled violently as a blast wave rolled over them. The hunters had found their trail again. Bright blue light flashed through the trees, burning everything it touched. The dragon roared, struggling to rise. They've found us. Eli grabbed its side, helping it move toward the deeper woods. But the hunters were faster now. 3 of them dropped from the air on mechanical wings, landing nearby with weapons raised. Their visors glowed like cold moons. Target sighted, one said, voice mechanical. Orders are to capture alive. Eli stepped in front of the dragon instinctively. You'll have to go through me first. The hunter tilted its head. Unarmed human detected. Irrelevant. It raised its weapon, a long energy spear that hummed with deadly light. Before Eli could even think, the dragon opened its mouth and unleashed a burst of flame. It wasn't strong, not like before, but it was enough to throw the hunters back. Fire spread across the forest floor, burning through dry leaves. Run! The dragon growled. Eli grabbed a fallen branch, set it aflame, and swung it wildly to clear a path. The heat was unbearable, the smoke thick enough to choke on. But the fire also covered their escape. Together, they pushed deeper into the forest until they reached the edge of a steep cliff overlooking the valley below. We're trapped, Eli said, panting. The dragon looked behind them, at the growing flames and the hunters pushing through. Then we jump. Eli's eyes widened. Jump? You can't fly. The dragon gave a faint smile or something close to it. I didn't say we'd land softly. Before Eli could protest, the dragon swept its tail around him protectively and leapt. The world turned upside down. Wind howled, rocks blurred, and Eli felt weightless for a heartbeat before they hit the river below with a thunderous splash. The cold water hit like ice. He was dragged beneath, spinning, fighting for air, until a massive claw caught him and lifted him to the surface. The dragon's body glowed faintly under the water as it dragged itself toward the shore. Still alive? It rumbled. Eli coughed and nodded weakly. Barely. Good, the dragon said. Then we keep moving. They reached a cave hidden behind a waterfall, its walls glowing with faint light reflected from the dragon's scales. The air inside was warm and safe. For the first time in days, Eli let himself breathe. The dragon lay down slowly, its body filling most of the space. Steam rose from its wounds, mixing with the mist from the waterfall. Eli sat beside it, still shaking from the cold and the fall. You said the altar of flame is on Dragon's Rest, he said quietly. How far is it? The dragon's eyes fluttered open. 2 days' journey if we had wings. Longer for you. But there is an old path that climbs from the river's end. Eli nodded. Then that's where we're going. The dragon closed its eyes, exhaustion finally overtaking it. Its voice faded almost to a whisper. You remind me of a man I once knew, a soldier who stood against darkness without fear. He, too, said something like that, before the world burned. Eli looked at the sleeping creature, feeling the weight of its words settle in his heart. The sound of the waterfall filled the cave like a slow heartbeat. Outside, the forest still burned, lighting up the night in shades of red and gold. He whispered to himself, "Then we'll finish what he started." But as he turned to look at the sky through the curtain of water, a shadow passed across the stars, enormous and silent. A massive ship, dark as iron, descending from the clouds. Its engines rumbled like thunder, and its lights cut through the smoke. Eli's stomach dropped. "They found us again," he said softly. The dragon's eyes opened halfway. "No," it whispered. "That is not a ship. That is their flagship." And above the burning forest, the sky itself began to glow as the true storm finally arrived. The night trembled as the great ship broke through the clouds. Its shadow covered half the valley, stretching like a dark hand across the burning forest. The air itself seemed to vibrate with its presence, a deep, humming sound that made the rocks in the cave tremble. Eli stepped closer to the waterfall's edge, peering through the silver mist. The ship was unlike anything he had ever seen. Massive, shaped like an arrowhead, with dozens of glowing eyes scanning the land below. He turned toward the dragon, who lay weak but awake, its golden eyes fixed on the sky. "You said it's their flagship," Eli whispered. "What does that mean?" The dragon's voice came slow and low, heavy with memory. "It means the Order of Ashes is no longer hunting. They are cleansing. Everything that breathes magic will be erased." Eli's stomach tightened. "Including you?" The dragon looked at him, a long, deep stare that carried centuries of pain. "Including me, and you if you stay by my side." But Eli didn't move. His heart pounded, fear clawing at him, but something inside him was stronger, something that refused to run. "Then I'm not leaving," he said firmly. "We started this together." A faint rumble of amusement left the dragon's chest. "You are a fool, Eli. A brave fool." The ship's engines roared again. From its underbelly, lines of light unfolded, thousands of metallic orbs dropping into the forest below. When they hit the ground, they burst open into crawling machines, each one with a single burning eye. The forest screamed with fire and metal. Trees exploded into sparks, and the river began to boil. The dragon tried to rise, but pain chained its limbs. "I cannot fight them as I am," it growled. "My fire is gone." Eli's mind raced. He looked at the faint glow under the dragon's scales, fading, flickering like a dying candle. Then he remembered the words it spoke before, the altar of flame. "If we reach that place," he said quickly, "it can restore you, right?" The dragon hesitated, then nodded slowly. "If we can reach it before the sky burns completely." Eli looked out again. The flagship's light was spreading, a slow wave of fire that ate through everything it touched. "Then we move now," he said. They left the cave under the cover of smoke. The waterfall hissed behind them as flames reflected off the water like liquid gold. Eli helped the dragon along narrow paths, guiding it toward the mountains that rose like black teeth against the horizon. Above them, drones buzzed through the smoke, searching, scanning, killing. As they climbed, the air grew thinner. Ash fell from the sky like dark snow. The dragon's breathing grew rougher with every step, its wounds reopening, leaving trails of faintly glowing blood. Still it moved. Still it refused to fall. After hours of silence, Eli asked softly, "What happens if we fail?" The dragon's voice was barely audible. "Then the last fire dies, and the world grows cold forever." The words sank into Eli's chest like a knife. He looked ahead, at the mountain peaks covered in mist and fire, and pushed harder. "Then we won't fail." Behind them, the flagship opened its central weapon, a massive beam cannon that hummed with blinding light. The sound was deafening, like the sky being torn apart. Eli turned back just in time to see it fire. A river of white fire roared across the valley, swallowing the forest, the river, the land. The shockwave reached them seconds later, shaking the ground so hard Eli nearly fell. "Go!" the dragon thundered, spreading its broken wings wide to shield him. The blast hit its back, sending a spray of molten scales flying. The smell of burning air filled the mountain pass. Eli cried out and grabbed the dragon's leg, pulling, begging it to move. When the smoke cleared, the dragon was still alive, barely. Its wings were torn even more, its scales cracked, but its eyes still burned faintly, refusing to close. "We are close," it rasped. "The altar lies beyond this ridge." They climbed higher through the storm of ash and fire. The world below was gone, only smoke and ruin remained. The mountain groaned under their feet as tremors shook the earth. Eli's hands bled from climbing the jagged rocks, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. When they finally reached the ridge, the view took his breath away. Below, hidden in a circle of glowing stone, stood the altar of flame. It was a vast ring carved into the earth, burning with an eternal fire that didn't consume. A light so pure it seemed to hum with life. Even the air around it shimmered with heat and power. The dragon stared at it, its eyes wide with something like awe and grief. "I never thought I'd see it again," it whispered. Eli helped it move forward. Each step seemed to cost the creature everything it had left. As they neared the altar, the ground trembled again. Not from the flagship this time, but from the mountain itself. A massive shape rose from the rocks ahead, unfolding from the shadows like a nightmare. It was a guardian, a beast made of black metal and burning stone, its eyes blazing with the same light as the altar. It looked at them with cold intelligence, then spoke in a voice like grinding steel. "Only the worthy may enter the flame." Eli stepped forward without hesitation. "He's dying," he shouted. "He's the last of his kind. Let him through." The guardian lowered its massive head, smoke pouring from its nostrils. "And what of you, human? Why do you walk beside fire when your kind has long feared it?" Eli's voice trembled, but his heart didn't. "Because fear is what destroyed us before. Maybe this time we stand with it instead." The guardian was silent for a long moment. Then it moved aside slowly, the ground trembling under its weight. "Then enter and be judged." Eli helped the dragon into the circle of light. The flames rose higher, swirling around them both, bright as the sun. The heat was unbearable, but it didn't burn. It wrapped around them like something alive. Eli shielded his eyes as the dragon's roar filled the mountain. Light exploded from within the circle. For a heartbeat, the whole sky turned gold. The flagship above staggered midair as its systems flickered, confused by the sudden surge of energy. Every drone in the valley dropped from the sky like dead birds. When the light faded, the dragon was gone. For a moment, Eli thought he was alone, until he heard the sound of massive wings. He looked up and saw it reborn. The dragon's scales glowed like living fire, its wings whole and wide, its eyes blazing with the strength of a sun. It hovered above the altar, roaring with a power that made the mountains shake. Eli stared, speechless. You did it," he whispered. The dragon looked down at him, its voice thunderous yet soft. "No, Eli, we did." Then, with one powerful beat of its wings, it rose into the sky, heading straight toward the flagship. Fire trailed behind it like a comet, bright enough to turn night into day. Eli stood on the mountain ridge, watching as the reborn dragon soared into battle, flames lighting up the heavens. The sky itself seemed to burn with life again, not with destruction, but with hope. And as the first explosion bloomed high above, Eli whispered to himself, "Let the world remember what it means to stand with fire." The night sky burned brighter than any dawn. The great dragon rose through the clouds like a living sun, fire streaming behind it in long golden ribbons. Each beat of its wings sent waves of heat and wind tearing across the valley below. The flagship, that vast iron beast of the Order of Ashes, turned its guns toward the rising light. Dozens of turrets swiveled, locking on to the glowing figure cutting through the smoke. Eli stood on the mountain ridge, the wind whipping his clothes, his heart pounding so loud it drowned out the thunder of engines. He could hardly breathe as he watched the dragon climb higher, its roar echoing across the ruined land. For the first time since he'd met it, there was no weakness in that sound, only power, ancient and unstoppable. The flagship fired first. A blinding beam of blue light streaked through the clouds, striking the dragon square in the chest. For a heartbeat, the world went white. Eli flinched, shielding his eyes. When he looked again, the dragon was still there, glowing brighter, wings wide, unbroken. The light didn't destroy it, fed it. From the dragon's mouth came a torrent of pure fire, brighter than the sun, hotter than anything the human world had seen in centuries. It cut through the clouds and slammed into the flagship's shields. Metal screamed as the massive ship's defenses cracked. Pieces of molten armor rained down, crashing into the forest below. The Order's fleet began to descend from orbit, smaller ships, shaped like blades, swarming toward the dragon. The sky turned into a storm of fire and metal. Missiles streaked upward, smoke trails twisting. But the dragon moved faster than thought, weaving between them, wings leaving trails of fire that shredded the air itself. Eli watched in awe. Every explosion lit up the mountains like flashes of a forgotten war. For a moment he forgot the pain, the loss, the ruin below. For a moment he felt hope, wild, burning hope. Then his radio crackled to life. A voice, metallic, calm, cold. Eli Cade, this is Commander Relon of the Order of Ashes. Step away from the altar. Eli froze. How do you know my name? He said, gripping the radio tightly. We know everything about you, the voice replied. You were not chosen by chance. The creature bound itself to your bloodline long ago. You are its key, its chain. Without you, it cannot survive. Eli's breath caught. What are you talking about? You think it saved you out of mercy? Relon's voice grew sharper. You are connected to it, boy. A remnant of the old pact, the bond between man and dragon. But if it lives, your kind will burn again. End this. Walk away. Let it die. Eli's heart raced. He looked at the dragon, now circling the flagship high above, fire clashing with metal in a storm of light. Could it be true? Was that why it had found him, why it trusted him? Because of some ancient bond written in blood? But as he watched, he remembered the dragon's words. You remind me of a man I once knew. A soldier who stood against darkness. Maybe that soldier was his ancestor. Maybe the blood of that courage still lived in him. Eli raised the radio again, his voice steady. If you're right, Commander, then maybe that bond was made for this moment. And I'm not breaking it. He threw the radio off the cliff. The battle above roared louder. The flagship opened its main weapon again, the same beam that had destroyed whole forests. But this time the dragon dove straight into it. Fire met light. The beam split around its wings, bending and dissolving under its power. The dragon smashed through the ship's armor, tearing into it with claws of flame. Eli could see it. The ship burning from the inside out, fire pouring from its wounds. The dragon's roar shook the mountains. But then, a new sound rose, one that froze Eli's blood, a deeper, darker rumble. From the clouds above the flagship, something else was descending, something even larger. Another ship, blacker than night, covered in crimson lights. The insignia of the Order of Ashes burned across its hull, a flaming sword over a circle of iron. The dragon turned, sensing it. The flagship beneath it was already falling, flames consuming its engines. But the new ship, the Judicator, opened its wings wide, revealing hundreds of mounted cannons glowing with deadly red light. The dragon roared, fire swirling around its body like a storm. It soared upward to meet the threat head-on. Eli couldn't stay still. He turned from the cliff and began to climb higher up the mountain, toward a narrow stone bridge that overlooked the battlefield. His body ached, his hands bled, but his heart drove him on. He couldn't just stand there while history repeated itself. Halfway up, he stumbled into a strange light, a small stone tablet buried under rubble, carved with the same symbol the dragon carried on its chest. He brushed away the ash and saw glowing words written in a language he somehow understood. One heart, one flame. The bond of man and fire shall rise when the world forgets its light. Eli touched the stone. The moment he did, it flared with heat. A pulse of energy surged through his body, filling him with warmth and pain all at once. He gasped, and saw his hands begin to glow faintly, the same golden hue as the dragon's fire. He stumbled back, eyes wide. What's happening to me? Down below, the dragon suddenly faltered mid-flight, its roar cutting short. It looked toward the mountain, eyes glowing in recognition. Eli, its voice echoed through the bond, not through sound, but through thought. You carry my flame. It lives in you. Eli's pulse pounded. Then tell me how to use it. Call it. The dragon's voice whispered. Not with fear, with purpose, with the will to protect. Eli clenched his fists, the heat inside him growing stronger, wilder. He looked up at the sky, where the Judicator's cannons began to charge. The dragon flew to intercept, but there were too many, far too many. Eli screamed, not in pain but in defiance. You want fire? Take it all. The light exploded from him. It burst across the mountains in a wave of gold, racing up into the sky like lightning made of fire. The dragon caught the wave midair. It surged through its wings, through its veins, burning brighter than ever before. Together, man and dragon became one inferno that lit up the heavens. The Judicator fired. The dragon's flame met the blast in midair. The collision tore open the clouds, blinding the world in white light. For a long moment, there was silence. No sound, no movement, only the faint echo of thunder fading in the distance. When the light cleared, Eli was kneeling on the mountain ridge, breathing hard. The sky was red and gold. The Judicator split in two, falling in pieces across the burning horizon. And above it all, the dragon soared. Alive, blazing, triumphant. Eli smiled weakly, tears mixing with ash on his face. We did it, he whispered. The dragon circled once overhead, then descended slowly, landing on the mountain before him. Its eyes burned softly now, not with rage but peace. The bond is awakened, it said. The world will remember fire again. Eli nodded. Then let's make sure it never forgets. The dragon lowered its head, allowing him to rest his hand against its glowing scales. Together they watched the dawn break through the smoke. A new light, clean and golden, shining on a world that might finally begin to heal. But as the camera of fate pulled back, far beyond the sky, among the stars, dozens of red lights began to blink. More ships awakening in the void. The war was not over. It had only just begun. The morning after the battle came quietly. The air smelled of smoke and wet earth, and the mountains still glowed faintly where the fires had burned through the night. Eli stood near the edge of the ridge, his hands still faintly warm, the memory of light still humming in his veins. Below him, the valley was a sea of ash and silence, a graveyard of machines. The sky, once full of fire, now carried the first soft colors of dawn. The dragon lay nearby, its wings folded, its body resting against the cracked stone. The golden glow of its scales dimmed slightly now, settling into something gentle, like the calm after a storm. It was alive, strong, free. But Eli could see the weight behind those ancient eyes. They will come again, won't they? He asked quietly. The dragon lifted its gaze toward the sky, where thin trails of smoke still rose into the heavens. Yes, the order never stops. They will send more ships, more soldiers, more fire. They will not forgive what we did today. Eli clenched his fists. Then we fight again. The dragon gave a small, tired smile. You speak as if the fire never burns out. Eli looked at the horizon, where sunlight began to cut through the mist. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it just waits for someone to remember. For a while, neither of them spoke. The wind whispered through the mountains, carrying the faint sound of the river below, the same river where their journey had begun. It felt like a lifetime ago that Eli had found the dying dragon by the old pump, begging for water. Back then, he had no idea what he was stepping into. Now, he was part of something much larger, something ancient, powerful, and terrifyingly alive. The dragon finally rose, its massive wings stretching wide. "The fire within you has awakened," it said softly. "You are bound to me now, Eli Cade. That bond will not fade." Eli nodded, though he didn't fully understand. "What does it mean?" "It means that your heart carries part of the flame eternal," the dragon explained. "And as long as you live, the fire cannot be extinguished. The Order will learn of this, and they will come for you." Eli stared at the ground for a long moment. "Then we'll need allies. Someone who can fight with us." The dragon's golden eyes glowed faintly. "There are none left who remember." Eli's expression hardened. "Then we'll make them remember." The dragon studied him. This young human with fire in his blood and determination in his eyes, and for a brief moment, it saw something familiar. The same spark that once lived in the heroes of the old age. It lowered its head in respect. "Then our next journey begins." But before they could move, the air trembled again. A deep, distant hum rolled across the sky. At first, Eli thought it was thunder until he looked up. Far above, breaking through the thin clouds, dozens of red lights flickered information. Not stars, ships. Sleek, dark, silent ships. The dragon's eyes narrowed. "They come faster than I expected." Eli's heart pounded. "We can't fight them all." "No," the dragon said grimly. "Not yet." The ships began to descend slowly, their lights growing brighter. The clouds swirled around them, turning crimson from the glow of their engines. The sound was low, heavy, like the growl of something ancient and hungry. "We have to move," the dragon said quickly. "There is a place far to the north, the Citadel of Sparks. Long ago it was where humans trained beside dragons. If anything remains of the old alliance, it will be there." Eli grabbed his pack, glancing once more at the sky. "Then let's go." The dragon lowered itself, and Eli climbed onto its back. As its wings unfurled, fire rippled down their length. Not wild, destructive flame, but steady, controlled power. The kind that could light a path through darkness. With one mighty leap, they rose into the air. The wind roared past them, carrying the scent of burning metal and ash. Below, the mountain crumbled under the heat left behind, and the world shrank beneath their flight. As they climbed higher, Eli looked down and saw what he hadn't noticed before. Across the land, dozens of other lights had begun to shine through the ash. Cities, settlements, people who had survived. The fire from their battle had not only destroyed, it had woken the world. "Look," he whispered. "They're watching." The dragon followed his gaze. Tiny figures moved through the ruins below, staring upward, pointing at the golden light streaking through the sky. For the first time in centuries, humanity saw a dragon not as a monster, but as hope. "They will remember," the dragon said softly. But far above them, unseen through the clouds, the Order's fleet had stopped its descent. The red lights flickered once, then vanished into the darkness. Deep within the Judicator's remains, a transmission was already being sent across the stars, not to Earth but beyond it. In a hidden command chamber, far from the ruined planet, the High Chancellor of the Order watched the footage in silence. The image showed Eli and the dragon rising together, light surrounding them like wings of gold. "So," the Chancellor murmured, his voice cold as stone, "the flame has chosen a new bearer." A figure stepped forward, a woman in silver armor, her eyes glowing faintly with the same red light as the ships. "Shall we deploy the Obsidian Legion?" "Not yet," the Chancellor replied. "Let the boy believe he has won. Let him think the world stands with him. Hope makes them careless." He turned toward the stars, where something massive moved. A shape so large it dwarfed even the Order's flagship. A fortress ship, black and silent, its surface covered in shifting red lines. "When the flame burns brightest," the Chancellor said, "we will smother it in the dark." Back on Earth, Eli felt a strange chill run through him, as if something far away had whispered his name. He looked up into the endless sky, unaware of the eyes watching him from the void. "Something's coming," he said quietly. The dragon nodded. "Then we prepare." The The wind howled around them as they flew north, toward the unknown. Below them, humanity began to stir from its long silence, watching the sky, whispering stories of a man and a dragon reborn from the ashes. And high above, in the cold dark between stars, the true enemy awakened, an empire built on shadow, ready to burn the world once more. The fire had returned, but so had the darkness. The wind screamed across the northern skies as Eli and the dragon flew through storm and smoke. The land below had changed. Forests turned to stone, rivers ran dark, and entire valleys lay buried in ash. Yet above it all, the sky still burned with streaks of gold from the dragon's wings. Every flap carried them farther from the ruins and closer to a place no human had seen in centuries. The Citadel of Sparks. For 2 days they flew without rest. At night, the stars watched silently, and at dawn, the horizon glowed red from distant fires. The dragon's voice, once booming and full of strength, now spoke in quiet tones, the kind that carried history in every word. Long ago, it said, humans walked beside dragons here. This was where your kind learned to master the flame, not as a weapon, but as a part of life itself. Eli listened, his mind full of questions but also fear. What happened to them? The same thing that always happens, the dragon said softly. Power divides. Some feared it, some tried to control it. And when fear met greed, the citadel fell. The flame was lost. Until now. They flew over a vast canyon filled with broken towers. At its center stood the remains of something ancient. A circular fortress carved into the mountain, surrounded by great metal pillars that once reached for the stars. Even through the snow and ruin, faint golden light glimmered from deep within. The Citadel of Sparks still lived. As they descended, the air grew heavy. Sparks of energy danced in the wind, brushing against Eli's skin like whispers. When the dragon landed, the ground shook, and the echoes of their arrival rolled through the ruins. Eli stepped forward carefully. The walls were covered in carvings, dragons and humans standing together, fire swirling between their hands. He touched one of the symbols, and the stone flared with light. A voice, not from outside, but inside his mind, spoke softly. Welcome, bearer of flame. The bond returns at last. The dragon bowed its head slightly. They remember. Before Eli could reply, the sky above cracked with thunder. He turned, heart freezing. From behind the storm clouds, a massive shadow emerged, dark, endless, and crawling with red lights. The Obsidian Legion had come. Dozens of warships, sleek and black as night, filled the sky. Behind them loomed the fortress ship of the High Chancellor, a floating city of death. The sound of their engines roared through the mountains, drowning out even the wind. Eli's pulse thundered. They found us. The dragon's golden eyes flared with light. Then this is where the fire stands its ground. The ships began to descend, unleashing swarms of drones that fell like burning rain. The ground shook as explosions ripped through the ruins. Eli stumbled backward, shielding his face from the fire and debris. Eli, the dragon roared. To the altar. He turned and saw it. Deep inside the citadel, a massive circle of stone glowing with the same flame that had reborn the dragon before. But this one burned brighter, fiercer. The heart of the flame eternal. Eli ran toward it as the dragon launched into the air, meeting the descending fleet head-on. Fire blazed from its wings, cutting through the first wave of drones like a storm of light. The sky became a battlefield. Fire against metal, life against machine. Eli reached the altar and fell to his knees, pressing his hands to the stone. The flame leapt up, golden and wild, wrapping around him. He could feel it, the connection, the bond, pulsing in rhythm with the dragon's heart. Show me, he whispered. Show me what I have to do. The flame responded. Images flashed in his mind, humans standing beside dragons, their fires joining as one. He saw his ancestor, the same soldier the dragon once spoke of, standing on this very altar, facing the same darkness long ago. His voice echoed through time. The flame cannot be destroyed, can only be forgotten. Remember it, and it will live forever. Eli's eyes snapped open. I remember. High above, the dragon fought like a creature reborn from stars. It tore through the Legion's ships, fire exploding from its jaws, its roar shaking the heavens. But even it could not fight them all. The Chancellor's fortress ship moved closer, its main cannon glowing with crimson light. The dragon felt the energy gathering, a blast strong enough to level the mountain. It turned its head toward the citadel below and saw Eli standing at the altar, surrounded by golden fire. Eli, it called. Now. Eli raised his hands, and the flames obeyed. They surged upward, spiraling into the sky. The fire from the altar met the dragon's own flame, merging into a single column of light that pierced the clouds. The Chancellor's weapon fired, a river of red light, furious and unstoppable, but the golden flame met it in midair. For a moment, the two forces clashed, shaking the earth itself. Then Eli screamed, pouring every ounce of his soul into the fire. Burn the darkness! The golden flame exploded outward, swallowing the red light, the ships, and the entire storm. The world vanished in white and gold. When the light finally faded, silence returned. The sky was clear. The fortress ship was gone. The Obsidian Legion was gone. Only drifting embers remained, glowing softly in the dawn. Eli stood in the center of the altar, surrounded by ashes. His hands still glowed faintly. The dragon lay nearby, wounded but alive, its body steaming from the battle. It lifted its head weakly, looking at him. You did it, the dragon said softly. Eli smiled through his tears. We did it. The dragon lowered its great head beside him. Together, they watched as sunlight broke across the world. Real, warm sunlight, not the red haze of war. The valleys shimmered with new light. From the ruins below, people began to emerge. Humans staring up at the sky with awe and disbelief. They had seen it. They had seen the flame. And now they remembered. The dragon's voice rumbled softly. The world will rebuild. The flame will live in every heart that dares to hope. Eli looked out across the brightening land. And maybe, he said, this time we won't forget. The dragon smiled, a rare, peaceful smile. Then my journey is complete. It closed its eyes, and its body began to dissolve into light. Not death, but transformation. The fire within it flowed into the air, the mountains, the rivers, the hearts of those below. The flame eternal was free again, no longer bound to one creature or one man. Eli stood alone at the altar, bathed in golden light. He could feel the fire inside him still burning softly, a reminder that some bonds never fade. He looked toward the horizon, where dawn spread across the world, and whispered, Rest now, old friend. I'll carry the flame forward. Then he turned, walking down from the citadel as the wind carried the faint echo of wings across the sky. A promise that the fire would never truly die. A story of courage, sacrifice, and the bond between man and fire. A bond that proves even in the darkest times, hope still burns. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Sci-Fi Galaxy for more emotional and powerful HFY tales like this one. Because every flame, no matter how small, deserves to be remembered.